Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. The Bucharest Nine summit is kicking off in Bucharest, Romania, with Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky also in attendance. Between the efforts to support Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression and Europe's ongoing rearmament drive, can the eastern flank bloc achieve enough political and economic momentum to ensure regional stability and tackle the thorny issue of changing US posture in Europe? And can other issues, such as the Yermak corruption case, provide ammunition to Ukraine's opponents and slow the process down? Joining us here today is Roland Freudenstein, co-founder of the Brussels Freedom Hub. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
So let's address the elephant in the room first. Do you think the Yermak case is going to have any bearing on what is being discussed, or is President Zelensky simply going to, be able to shrug it off and pretend like nothing has happened? After all, he himself is not directly implicated, but it was his aide who was involved in this graft case.
Well, I don't think this is the Yermak case is any material for summit debates, at least not the official one. The open ones. And behind the scenes, there may be some questions to Zelensky, but frankly speaking, the Bucharest Nine group is an extremely pro-Ukrainian group. At least most of its members are. So no one is going to try to put Zelensky on the spot here, and which. Of course, doesn't mean that in other EU member countries the Yermak case will not play a negative role when it comes to Ukraine's aspirations.
So, of course, Ukraine is also going to be able to say, well, we have corruption services which are hard at work to root out the problem. Now, coming back to the format itself, it is actually co-hosted by the Polish and Romanian presidents. Do you think that this is going to be a significant advantage, given that they come from some rather different political backgrounds?
Well, indeed. They are both very different politically. They do represent the two heavyweights in the group. I mean, essentially, the Bucharest Nine are the eastern flank countries. Now, for the last couple of years, they've been joined by the Nordics in these summits. But the two obvious heavyweights when it comes to size of country and defense forces strength are Romania and Poland. So Poland is co-hosting this summit this time, also providing part of the funding. Now, President Nawrocki, as we all know, has been playing an extremely controversial role when it comes to Poland's standing in European geopolitical debates and the efforts to strengthen Europe's defense and deterrence against Russia. That's a domestic.
You're referring to the veto to the act which was intended to implement the European financial instrument known as SAFE, of course. It is being implemented in the end without the legislative backings, which means certain limitations there. But do you also think that perhaps his links to the MAGA camp could prove useful at some point, where you actually have discussions about moving American troops to the eastern flank? Could it basically be, playing both ways?
It's a very interesting debate. The attempt is definitely there by Nawrocki and his people to prove that he can get those 5,000 troops that Trump has decided to remove from Germany in the upcoming 6 months. And to Poland, the big question is whether actually Trump is going to do this. He said that he might, but there are two important reasons why he might not. And these are, first, that actually the withdrawal of American combat troops from Europe fits perfectly into the MAGA strategy of, shifting the burden of defense and deterrence to the Europeans within NATO. So I mean, to actually leave these 5,000s in Europe, just move them to a different country, would run counter to that strategy. Second, is Trump really going to want to provoke Putin? Big question, because Putin would certainly mind 5,000 American combat troops of the Stryker Brigade moved closer to the Russian border. So, in one of these regular phone calls between Trump and Putin, I'm sure Putin will make his resistance, his rejection of that known to Trump. So, Putin's persuasion has worked perfectly in the past. So, despite all of President Nawrocki's efforts, I doubt whether this is really going to happen in the near future.
Do you think that Trump is going to heed Putin's warning, though? It seems like America is now looking at China as the near peer on the geopolitical scene, meaning that Russia is sort of like, one level down from that. Do you think that perhaps this could be something that might be discussed between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, but that Putin ultimately, if Trump actually wants to do that, is going just, to have to live with that, even though he really doesn't want to?
Well, objectively speaking, you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, Putin has to live with it. But, I mean, Putin also had to live with U.S. sanctions against Russian oil, and yet they were lifted because of the Iran war. And the general oil price development on the global scale. So what we have here is we have a U.S.-China relationship, which is complex and difficult, and we don't know what's going to come out of the Beijing summit. And we've got the U.S.-Russia relationship, where mysteriously Trump is always heeding Putin's wishes, even though Russia is definitely not in the same league as China anymore when it comes to economic power and global relevance. But that hasn't kept the US from being strangely pro-Russian in many cases over the last couple of years.
So does it mean, if you're saying that Trump is susceptible to persuasion on the part of Putin, that countries of the eastern flank would be better off investing more in European industry, even though this industry is like, in the process of being reawakened, if you will, so that, the safe financial instrument is one of the methods to make it happen, but some of the capabilities are still not there. Do you think that we're dealing with a gap that has to be filled in somehow now?
Well, these capabilities, if they're not there, they have to be developed as fast as possible. And I think that's one of the big topics at the Bucharest Nine summit. And it will also inform the position of the Eastern flank countries in the Ankara summit of NATO, which is coming up in 2 months. So, the industrial capabilities are lacking at the moment, but they will have to be created. And I mean, that's almost a consensus among Europe, among NATO's European members. The question to what extent we should still buy available military hardware from the United States, for example, or South Korea or other countries, as long as these industrial capabilities and these weapon systems are not there yet in Europe. And that is where we have differences among the member states. And we might also have differences among the participants of the Bucharest Nine. I could, for example, imagine here a gap between the Nordics and some of the Eastern flank countries, which will prefer to buy hardware as long as it's there from wherever, whereas the Nordics might insist more on European autonomy and buying European kit, because even if that means lower quality, higher prices, at least for the foreseeable future.
Roland Freudenstein was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and, of course, for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.